If you've made it this far into the series, I'm going to take a guess and say that you enjoy shooting, or at least you enjoy the idea of it. I enjoy it too, you know, the smell of the gunpowder, the feel of the rifle in my hands, the funny little characters that they put on the targets. But there has been a long important aspect of shooting that a lot of people seem to forget about. You're supposed to hit your target. Now I know how fun it can be to mag dump into trash. Trust me, I've sent many a cardboard box to meet their maker. But marksmanship is an important skill to have, even if you only shoot recreationally. Now, I am about as far from a sharpshooter as a person can get, so I can't really give you any advice on how to shoot more accurately, but what I can do is tell you about the devices which will help you shoot better. So today we'll be talking about optics, what the different kinds are, their pros and their cons, and a little bit about how they work. Now, there are tons of different optics out there, but many of them fall into a few distinct categories, so I'll just go over the basics of the most popular types. Before we get into the fancy stuff, let's go over the basics. An optic is a device that helps the shooter get a clear view of his target so he can effectively engage it. The most rudimentary of these devices are called iron sights. Iron sights have been used for centuries. Some are quite complex, and some are quite simple, but pretty much all of them follow the same principles. The most common form of iron sights include a rear sight with some kind of notch or hole punched in it, and a front sight, which is usually just a small metal post. To use these sights, the front sight must be aligned with the rear sight notch. If the sights are aligned correctly, the bullet will hit the spot where the tip of the front sight is. This only works, however, if the rear sight is adjusted for the correct distance. Some sights can also be adjusted to account for wind. At long distances, wind can blow a bullet off course, making a shooter miss even though their sights were aligned on target. So, after people used iron sights for a few hundred years, someone eventually said, "Hey, what if we put a fucking telescope on this thing so we can shoot people from further away and not have to hear their horrible, agonizing cries as the last few breaths slowly escape their body, leaving an ever-present and never-fading memory that strikes at your mind in the dead of night, maddening you, damning you to a life of cold, empty regret, leaving you begging to be swallowed by the callous maw of the abyss." Jesus Christ! And thus the telescopic sight was born. Telescopic sights are what we commonly refer to as scopes, and in their earliest designs, these scopes were basically just spyglasses screwed onto the side of the rifle, allowing for the shooter to make further shots. But over time, they became more complex, allowing the magnification to be increased or decreased, becoming cheaper and more durable, and even incorporating various coatings and gaseous fillings to prevent condensation and glare. There are also now some very complex reticles which display charts and graphs to help the shooter calculate things like the distance of their target, as well as how far the bullet will drop and sway with the wind. Now, the pros of telescopic sights is that they provide you with the ability to make precision shots at range, greatly increasing your chances of seeing and hitting your target before they can see and hit you. As I said, some scopes have really nice reticles, making these shots easier. The downsides of these optics are that they are pretty fragile, heavy, expensive, and not very useful for closer engagements. They also have a generally small field of view and small amount of eye relief, meaning that it can be difficult to get your eye to see through the scope, and once you do, the amount of stuff you can see is limited to a smaller area. If you try clearing a room while using a full power scope, you're gonna meet God. As optics technology improved, electronics started to become incorporated. This eventually led to the development of electronic optics, like red dots. When talking about red dots, you'll usually be talking about reflex or prisms. We'll talk about reflex sights first. Reflex sights are actually pretty simple. An LED shines a light onto a lens, making a dot on the glass for you to aim with. These optics don't offer magnification, meaning that they won't help you see further like a telescopic sight would. But they do allow for a larger field of view, as well as the ability to easily shoot with both eyes open. The dot on these optics is not precise. Usually they provide aiming accuracy of about 2 MOA, which is great for close quarters, but not ideal for shooting at a distance. Red dots are also not ideal for shooters with astigmatism, since the light can appear blown out and fuzzy. Many red dots allow for co-witness, meaning that you can still see and use your iron sights in the event that the optic stops working. The eye relief on a reflex sight is virtually unlimited, being very forgiving when engaging targets quickly. They are also infinitely focused, meaning that the dot will hold over the same spot regardless of the position of your eye. So as long as the sight is properly zeroed, the dot and the gun will always be aiming at the same spot. These optics are also fairly simple and inexpensive to produce. Many modern reflex sights are also quite durable, and they can be made very small, making use on handguns more and more common. The next type of red dot is the prism. Prisms are easy to spot since they usually take a short tubular shape. Instead of focusing the light using a lens like a reflex sight, prism sights use a prism. Imagine that. Prism dots still have most of the benefits of reflex dots, But using a prism allows the optic to become magnified. While this magnification is not as strong as a full-power telescopic sight, it still allows for further engagements than a reflex. Prism sights also provide a smaller field of view and decreased eye relief, making it slightly harder for the shooter to see out of the optic. Prisms also usually have what are called etched reticles. This means that the reticle is actually carved into the glass, then lit by the LED. This allows for the reticle in a prism to be more complex than a reflex, and it also allows for the shooter to keep using the sight if the battery goes out. Then you have holographic sights. Holographic sights share some similarities with red dots, but they're much more complicated. Firstly, the reticle is not just being reflected from an LED onto a lens, but it's actually being projected by a laser off a mirror in between the glass, creating a three-dimensional image in the optic. The laser offers finer detail in the reticle, meaning that holographic sights are often better equipped for long-range shooting than standard red dots. There also isn't a real limit to how complex the reticle can be. The laser can create different reticles, drop charts, etc. without issue. The holographic projection means that the reticle actually appears to be floating out beyond the optic. Now, just like red dots, holographic sights offer a large field of view and generous amount of eye relief, but holographics have a shorter battery life than red dots due to the laser. Holographic sights are also bulkier than red dots due to their added complexity and higher power use. Another con of holographic sights is the price. EOTech is pretty much the only company that makes them, and they don't let go of them for cheap. ACOGs. The Advanced Combat Optical Gun Sight, or ACOG, is a fixed-power prismatic telescopic sight. These optics were chosen by the military during the early years of the War on Terror. The idea behind the ACOG is that you can get a rugged, lightweight optic that offers acceptable performance at close to mid-range. And it did just that for a long time. However, in recent years there have been some advancements in optics technology that have made ACOGs somewhat obsolete. Now, there are somewhere between 10 and 12 million different models of ACOG, so I'll have to generalize a bit here. ACOGs are often praised for having very large fields of view, but they don't have a lot of eye relief. The reticle on an ACOG is quite good as well, being nice and crisp and offering a drop chart. The reticle is powered by tritium. This lets it be illuminated without the use of batteries, but after about 10 to 15 years, the tritium gets used up and stops lighting up the reticle. As a redundancy to this, ACOGs have a fiber optic cable running along the top. This cable collects sunlight and uses it to illuminate the reticle further, which is pretty sweet. ACOGs are fixed power, usually about 4x. This makes them great for medium range shooting, but they falter a little bit at close and long range. ACOGs are usually pretty expensive too, rarely going for less than $1,000 if you want a real one. Now, if ACOGs are Lightning McQueen, LPVOs are Jackson Storm. Low power variable optics do just about everything ACOGs can do, but better. They typically offer variable magnification from 1 to 6 or 1 to 8 power. They're very much a jack-of-all-trades type of optic. Unfortunately, this means that they're a master of none. LPVOs at 1x power are good for close quarters, but not quite as good as a red dot due to having less eye relief, though it is better than the ACOG. If you adjust the optic to full magnification, you're able to engage targets at significant distances, but not as significant as if you were using a dedicated scope. They also function well at mid-power, just like ACOGs. They have much better eye relief than ACOGs, though they don't provide quite as much field of view. LPVOs are usually pretty heavy, since they need all the lenses necessary to work through such a wide variety of magnifications. LPVOs are great if you want a single optic that will do a good, but not amazing job at whatever it is you want an optic to do. Since they kind of became the new hotness, so many manufacturers are making them that you can find one at just about any price range, but a nice one will still be fairly expensive. And those are pretty much the basics. You may have noticed I didn't talk about night vision. Look, I'm too poor for night vision. I'm too poor to even talk about night vision, alright? You know what? Everybody's saying you gotta go out and get night vision or else you're gonna die. Well, you know what? I'm on a budget here, alright? I'm out here struggling. I'm in these streets, son. Y'all killing me with... Anyways, I hope you learned something. Have a good day. Thank you for watching. You stay safe. Class dismissed.